We have these gorgeous Christmas reindeer statues, but because they're such an awkward shape and size, I haven't put them away yet. I'm too scared that they'll get broken. So they've kind of been out on display in the lounge room since November 2018.
So to quote my wife, either they go or you go. I'm like 90% sure that she's bluffing, but I made some boxes just to be safe. I've decided on some simple pine-mitered boxes, strengthened by splines and with inset lids and bases. The first thing I did was carefully rip my boards down the centre so I could double the yield from each one. The second thing I did was to let these boards fall to the concrete floor and destroy that careful work. Fortunately, after thicknessing the boards and then cutting the angles, I was able to remove any of the damage. When building a box, I find that planning ahead saves a heap of time and effort. I of course did not plan ahead, so I spent 10 minutes standing here looking like a goose, trying to visualize how to build these damn things. I swear, I could hear the damn thing laughing at me. I did get there eventually. I decided on 4 boxes that when I stacked them up would equal 2 roughly equal towers. Good for stacking and storing. Experience from my previous adventures in box making tells me that I should have the base and the lid inset into the box, sitting in grooves. I cut these grooves on the table saw, just one pass, slightly less than halfway through the board. And of course you can't insert a base and a lid unless you cut a base and a lid. Then to make them fit the groove that I'd already cut, I stood them on end and trimmed them up. Having a tall fence and zero clearance inserts on the table saw makes this sort of cut very easy and safe. And hey, guess who has videos on making tall fences and zero clearance inserts? The first dry fit here looked promising, but I goofed up. I cut my top and my base too small. That was easy enough to fix though, I just trimmed the sides down slightly. The next fit was good, so this box was glued up and set aside. If you've been following the channel for the past few months, you may know that I'm working through different phases of a plan in which I try to cover a lot of different techniques to improve my skill set. These boxes actually represent the end of my Summer of Boxes phase, and at the end of this video I quickly talk about what that means and what the next phase is going to be, so make sure you stick around for that one. For the 3 bigger reindeer, I repeated all those steps, but I made 2 boxes the same size for the fat guys and then 1 extra tall one. The glue-ups were a little more fiddly on the bigger boxes, but a gentle, delicate touch is all that's needed to finesse them into a nice square position. Soon enough, all 4 reindeer had their own box to call home. To cut my splines, I came up with what is quite possibly the most beautiful jig that you've ever seen. And incidentally, probably the one that looks more like a spaceship than any other. Okay, so I bodged it together from scraps, but it worked. The base of this jig is just an old sled that's been sitting in the trash pile for a few months now. It still has rails and it still slides on the table saw, so it's good enough for this. All I had to do was cut a 45-degree angle in an old chunk of pine, screw it all together, and I had a serviceable spline cutting setup / super cool rocket ship. Plans on my website, only 20 bucks, bargain. For the splines, I found a couple scraps of Merbo and spotted gum. Basically, I was after anything darker than pine for a little bit of contrast. Leaving the tape on the boxes from the original glue up was intended, as I figured that was going to help me with squeeze out from the splines as well. All the boxes had their splines flush trimmed, then sanded smooth on the bench sander. Then I put a small round over on them at the router table, and finally I sanded by hand to smooth things over at the end. Soon enough, it was time to cut the lids off the boxes. I'm not using any hardware on these boxes, and that's on purpose. I've made a bunch of different boxes through this little Summer of Boxes project of mine, just to practice different techniques. If I spent $10, $15, $20 on nice hardware for each box, I'd be a couple hundred deep on them now. I know a couple hundred isn't big money, but it seems like a bit of a waste to me. And anyway, to be quite honest, I like this method of super glue and MDF to provide a nice piston fit, especially for boxes that really are only going to be open once or twice a year. For the finish, I went the easy route and just sprayed these boxes with varnish. They're only clear pine, there's no need to go overboard. I did end up feeling a little woozy at the end of this, and watching the footage back, yeah, I can kind of see why. I'll wear my mask next time. So that's it. I'm calling this Summer of Boxes project a success. I made 11 boxes all up to varying levels of quality. I think the dovetail photo box is probably my favourite, but I enjoyed the entire process over the past 3 months. The exciting thing is that this now means I get to move on to the next focus area, which is something I've been super keen for. It's time to start making my own tools. Over the next few months, I'm going to be making a bunch of hand woodworking tools. I might use a bit of brass, I might shell out for some nice exotic wood. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm really excited to start this next phase. Make sure you subscribe so you can follow along, and if you have an idea of a tool that you think I should be making, let me know down below. All options are on the table. The workbench. All options are on the workbench.